My brother and I have always been intrigued by the unexplainable. Like many, we're fascinated with stories of the supernatural, fringe science, and modern-day mysteries.
Though we've seen no first-hand proof of its existence, our minds remain open to the possibility.
Unsatisfied with the so-called evidence on television and the internet, we are choosing to take matters into our own hands and conduct our own interviews and research.
Now we're on a quest to speak with as many people as we can and hear the stories of these events from those who have lived them.
No Hollywood effects or exaggerations, and no hidden agenda. We invite you to listen and decide what and who you believe.
We are the Brothers Mysterium.
Hello and welcome to the Brothers Mysterium. My name is Tommy. This is the Brothers Mysterium, the #1 commercial-free paranormal podcast on the planet. It's the podcast phenomenon sweeping the globe. You're here, you're part of it, you're listening. So why not rate and review us on whatever podcast provider you're currently using? Head on over to Facebook, facebook.com/thebrothersmysterium. Give us a like. And then jump on Twitter and Instagram and follow us. Tweet us, add us, tag us, like us, at Mysterium Bros. And I am joined once again this episode by my special guest co-host, Axe. Axe, welcome back.
What's up, Tommy? Thank you for having me back on.
And we are going to continue our exploration of Death Omens. Axe, are you ready to get back into it?
I am not in the right frame of mind at all, but I am ready to go. Round 2.
All right, then. Let's do it. On the last episode, we talked about animals, had stories, experiences from people where animals, crows, a horse, were omens of death, a story involving a banshee, and a lot of discussion we had about dreams. But let's switch gears to more reality-based, true-to-life experiences, things that have happened, and step outside the dream world and get away from animals as we look into some other examples of omens of death.
The Brothers Mysterium.
Over the next year, sightings of the Mothman increased in frequency. The descriptions of the creature were eerily similar. Part man, part bird with huge wings and hypnotic red eyes. After nearly a year of sightings, a silver bridge leading out of town collapsed, killing 46 people. One witness claimed to have seen the Mothman on the bridge just prior to the disaster. A debate has raged ever since about whether the Mothman somehow played a role.
One of the most popular ones is the Mothman, which we did an episode 5, the Mothman and Point Pleasant. And it's an interesting one because obviously the Mothman prophecies, the book, the movie, it's a huge deal because people had seen the Mothman. They were wondering, why is he here? What does he symbolize? And then the Silver Bridge collapsed. Many people lost their lives in that bridge collapse, and then the Mothman seems to have disappeared. So there's a lot of theories there. And obviously, whether you believe in the Mothman or not, the bridge did collapse. But again, so many people reported seeing him, so many incidents, so many weird things happening in the town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So let's continue with stories that take place when people are awake, just to get rid of that dream doubt. This next story is a very interesting one. Came through via email, and it was read by a friend of the show and actress Kelly Walton. This is Jenna's story.
My name is Jenna, and I live in New York. My husband died at the very end of 2017, a few weeks after he went back to his home country, which is England. When we got married in March, his replacement ring, he wore the same ring from the same company before we got married, but the ring was snapped, so he got another one to replace it. Anyway, his replacement ring turned his finger black in the shape of a wedding band. A few days before he left to go home, he said, "Jenna, I'm at the end of my life." Although he was in his early 40s and not outwardly dying, with no indication he was going to die. We said goodbye dozens of times over 12 years. But the last time he called me upstairs and sobbed uncontrollably for a long time. I kept asking him why. And he just said, "I'm going to miss you so much." I have no idea why he was so upset that one time, since it was the easiest time. I say easiest time because it was our final separation before he got his green card. We were together for 12 years long distance and got married last spring. So, out of all of our goodbyes, it should have been the least traumatic, since it was the time we were finally closing the distance, as long-distance relationship people say. The night before I heard he had died, I dreamed he emailed me and said we couldn't see each other anymore. Not like a breakup, like he was explaining a circumstance. Then I dreamed my house washed away and the only remnant was our couch, where we spent most of our time talking. I do not typically remember dreams.
With her husband's odd behavior leading up to his death, I asked Jenna if she thought he somehow knew he was dying, or were there any signs something was medically or physically wrong with him to make her believe that he was sick? Also, with him saying goodbye and talking about missing her, was there a chance he took his own life?
He died of a sudden hemorrhage. He had nosebleeds when he was here before he went back home, which he thought was just a change in climate, and that he'd have to have something cauterized. His mother said that it had happened to him before. If either of us thought it was a sign of impending danger, much less death, we would have gone to the doctor, but we were both not even close to aware he was in danger. The only sign was nosebleeds, and he was really happy about moving here. So, I don't think he had any idea about what would happen. If you want to go to the if it's your time route, he died right before a scheduled doctor's appointment of something sudden and instantly fatal. I don't know if I think it's anything but bad luck, but if there was a force ensuring everyone's time to go is adhered to, it was like, this going to the doctor can't happen. Since it was a hemorrhage, I think we can safely rule out suicide. They had to have an autopsy mandated by law because of his young age and unexplained death, and ruled it to be an internal hemorrhage. It was ruled natural causes.
Very intriguing story here, and sad story, where Jenna's husband, and this is kind of the death omen in my eyes, has this wedding ring. It snapped. He gets a replacement ring, and it leaves a black band on his finger, which is very ominous. She does have a photo of it, which we will again post at Mysterium Bros on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook.com/The Brothers Mysterium. But something just eerie and darkly symbolic of this black wedding band on his finger. And his behavior is odd too. He kind of says, like, "I'm going to miss you so much. I'm at the end of my life." And she's like, "This is the last time we're going to be apart. This is weird. We should be excited. We should be happy. We've done long distance for so long." And then, obviously, he goes back to England, passes away suddenly, abruptly. My first thought was, like, could he have been depressed or suicidal? But I directly asked that, and she was like, no, it was nothing like that. It ended up being explained away by it was a sudden hemorrhage. But she also had that weird dream the night before she heard he died, where she got an email from him, which said, like, we cannot see each other anymore. But she said it was not a breakup email. It was more of like an explanation. So kind of a more just like matter of fact, like, hey, sorry, we just can't see each other anymore. And then the house washed away. The only remnant was the couch where they had spent so much time together, talking, hanging out. She typically does not remember her dreams. So there is that dream aspect to it. which could definitely, again, be a precognitive dream. And again, it could just be she's dreaming of her husband. She spends a lot of time with him. But that ring and his behavior is definitely odd. What did you think of this story, Axe?
Well, what do you want to talk about? What should we talk about first? The dreams, the real life? There was a lot in this, and it's a crazy cool story.
Let's do the dream. This was a wild one. Let's do the dream first, because I know you're a big dream guy.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the dream took a real back seat in this one.
Yeah.
But, obviously, I know at that point, he put all the stuff in her head about, making her think, giving her some sort of doubt as to, like, what's going on and why is he saying this? We're never going to see each other again. I'm going to miss you. That's in her head, right? Once he starts saying that. So to me, it's not crazy that she might start having some dreams that give her more of that fear,
Especially like getting an email from him, like we can't see each other anymore, would kind of, if she is suddenly subconsciously like having doubts of what's going on, what's up with him,
Yeah, because she has to be wondering, why is he saying this to me? So, yeah, it's not that crazy. She has a dream where he emails her and breaks it all off, or although she said it wasn't like that, but
yeah,
it was about as clear as her real conversations with him in person. I mean, but as far as when he was with her physically, sobbing and crying and seemingly worried, right? And they're never going to see each other again, and they're literally supposed to be about to be able to see each other forever, right? Once he gets his green card,
right? That's the tragedy of it all.
Yeah, it's crazy and it sucks, but I couldn't help but wonder, when she said that he was having nosebleeds, and she had a long distance relationship with him, right?
Yeah.
For 12 years?
For a long time.
But is it possible that he had some sort of terminal illness that he never told her about?
I guess anything is possible. Yeah. She had said, though, that like if they had thought it was a bigger issue, but again, if he was keeping it a secret, you never know. But I think that she even talked to like his mother, who said, oh yeah, he was having nosebleeds. He kind of always had nosebleeds, but yeah, maybe he knew, or maybe even just like he just could sense it coming or something, Maybe he didn't know he had whatever was going on internally. He just had a feeling like, oh, I don't feel good. Something ain't right.
Right. And when I recently saw these photos of McConnell. Do you see these photos of McConnell?
Oh, I
his
have.
hands that are going around where he's all bruised and his hands are bruised and he's got like some bleeding coming from some parts on his face or his hands, and people started wondering, is he on blood thinners? He's got some like blood thing going on. When she mentioned the whole ring, something about the ring and the black band around his finger from the ring, the nosebleeds.
Yeah.
I just started wondering, was the ring? Was that from like like easy bruising, and is that related to the blood issues?
Yeah, like a medical thing rather than that's interesting. I didn't think of that. I was thinking more just spooky, scary, but that's a good point. If something was going on,
I mean, were the nosebleeds getting more
maybe
frequent? Like, did he just? I'm the kind of person that if I'm worried about something, I think I'm dying, right? So I'm like, I'm literally like, I'll make it a doctor's appointment, but the whole time I'm like, I'm going to the doctor and he's going to tell me I've got like 2 weeks left to live.
Yeah.
Could he have been feeling that way because of some things going on medically, or he knew this doctor appointment was coming up, right? So he's worried, and he's talking to her like someone who's just worried, a little paranoid, right? I'm gonna miss you. He's sobbing. He thinks it's the end for himself for whatever reason, and then maybe it's just a coincidence that he passes away, right before he was going to see the doctor. But he could have also just been worried.
Again, Another tragic part of the story, too, was like if it had just been a few days later, who knows if the doctor could have been like, oh, my God, we got to give you emergency surgery or get you on whatever medication or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I have to think that listen, it's not a dream, right? And it's not someone seeing a horse. This is another human being that someone knows very well, sitting next to them, talking to them, why she wasn't able to get more out of him on that couch, and really have him explain why, why are you sobbing? I don't understand that. Because I think that if my wife was doing that to me, I would not let her leave until we figured out what the hell was going on there,
Right. I mean, it sounded like, I guess she maybe mistook it as like, oh, he's sad that we're going to be apart again, but it's the last time, so don't be that sad. So
it
maybe
wasn't that serious
in hindsight
at the time.
I mean, I guess she was just thinking like, oh yeah, it does kind of suck. We're going to miss each other. So maybe she said like it's more emotional than usual, but maybe she just didn't realize like, wow, this is something really wrong. She was probably, it sounded to me at least that she was just like, yeah, he was like kind of overly upset about it, but it's the last time, we'll get through it. And then obviously, unfortunately, that did not pan out.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say that, so it's a person, and he obviously knew something was, he sensed or knew something was wrong, right? I mean, he was either
clearly
planning on breaking it off, or he knew he was sick. I mean, he can't just be emotional and upset for nothing out of nowhere. Something didn't take over his body, so he had to know he had to have some idea what was going on, or at least understand himself why he was upset.
Something was definitely afoot.
It wasn't just like
case.
Something overtook him, right? That can't be explained. I'm sure he would, if he was alive, he'd be able to explain it.
Yeah, it's I mean, he was almost his own harbinger of death, his own death omen, where he sort of didn't predict it, but it's kind of alluded to it with like, this is the end, I'm going to miss you. It's odd. A lot of unanswered questions, which again, unfortunately, we can't talk to the one person who would have those answers. And he died in England. Our next story, we're going to stay in England. Compliments of Julie, who submitted it in writing. It's being read by actress and voice artist Chrissy Chanel. This one involves someone awake but seeing a specter.
The brothers Mysterio.
My name's Julie and I live in England. My auntie phoned me last Sunday and we had a long chat as usual, and during it, she casually told me that she'd seen a ghost in her flat. I thought it was a little odd, but I didn't really think too much of it. Apparently she told her son about seeing the ghost as well, but he just thought it was strange. Then I received a phone call on Thursday at lunchtime telling me she had collapsed at the gym and she was taken by ambulance to the hospital. My auntie was very fit, the right weight, didn't drink or smoke, and she went to the gym at least 3 times a week, and she even did those long walks every other day and never taken any medication at all. She was at the gym, went to get changed at the end of the session, and she collapsed in the changing room. She had a large stroke, so it was very sudden. She died today. She didn't say much or give specific details about what she was seeing, but she wasn't worried by it. She said, "Ghost," so I'm assuming it was one. I wonder if it was her husband, knowing that her time was coming to an end.
So that's Julie's experience with her auntie. Her auntie casually kind of mentioned like, oh yeah, I saw a ghost. She also told her son that she'd been seeing a ghost around her flat, but not too worried, not scared, just kind of like, oh, this is a kind of interesting thing. A few days later, she collapses at the gym and very suddenly dies of a large stroke. But she was fit, obviously. She was at the gym. She's fit. She goes for walks. She didn't drink. She ate right. She didn't smoke. So it begs the question in this case, was that ghost in her flat some sort of death omen? Julie kind of guesses, maybe, wonders, was it her auntie's husband coming to get her, which again, we had talked about the death omen of seeing loved ones, seeing people who have passed on before us. Julie's aunt was never specific in that she probably would have said, like, I saw my husband's ghost around the house. But she did say kind of out of nowhere, like, yeah, I've been seeing this ghost. And then a few days later, she's gone. So what do you make of this one?
I mean, honestly, there's not much to this story, right?
Short and sweet.
Short and sweet. Her aunt's
Not so sweet, I guess.
Not so sweet. I mean, the aunt sounds like a sweet lady, you know?
Yeah, she
Fit,
does.
no drinking, no smoking. And we've heard of people, regardless of how in shape they are, we know you can pass at any moment for a variety of reasons. So that I don't think has anything to do with anything other than it being us knowing that she was seemingly healthy, right?
Yeah, I mean, this time we can confirm that this was out of nowhere.
Right, exactly.
She was definitely
Finally.
healthy and good shape. Yeah, yes. Boom, we got one.
We got one, but I mean, she saw a ghost. Julie didn't see the ghost. It was her aunt who saw the ghost. I don't know. I don't have that much to say about this. If she saw a ghost and she passed away a week later, I mean, it's hard to argue with that not seeming like some sort of omen.
Yeah, it's a weird coincidence that suddenly, and she didn't say like she was, kind of the type of woman who is always talking about ghosts or spirits or spirituality or the afterlife. So it sounds like suddenly she's telling Julie, she's also telling her son, just like, yeah, I'm seeing this ghost around the house. A few days later, she dies. So there's some sort of connection there. I mean, I guess it was a death omen in a way, we would assume. I do, once again, unfortunately, the one person we'd love to talk to, we can't. I would love to know, what did she see exactly? Was it somebody she recognized? Although she probably would have mentioned that, you would think. So an eerie story, like we said, short but scary, and again, hard to explain.
Listen, people don't just see a lot of ghosts, right? And it didn't seem like this was the kind of woman who saw ghosts frequently. So it is very eerie that she was seeing a ghost, didn't think much of it, which I think is a little strange in itself, but we can look beyond that. If you don't see a lot of ghosts, all of a sudden you're seeing a ghost hang out with you during the week. I don't know how that's something you just casually mention to someone.
Yeah, on a phone call. Not much new here. Been seeing a ghost around the house.
Ghost again.
Yeah.
If I saw a ghost and they were showing up every day, I would start a whole podcast about it probably.
Probably. The Axe Mysterium.
Yeah, that plus the passing very suddenly. That does sound like an omen.
It definitely does. And just to contradict myself, maybe the reason she wasn't scared was because she did recognize this ghost and she just didn't mention it. Like, if you saw just a random ghost, you'd probably be like, why is there an 18th century, little girl creeping around my house? But if it was her husband or something, she was like, oh, there's something more beautiful. And she wasn't alarmed, and maybe she didn't want to say it to freak them out. I don't know. Once again, we're guessing. But
I don't know. I think you're alarmed even if it's your good-looking husband who's doing push-ups in the kitchen. Like, I still think that's going to alarm you.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Well, let's keep the alarm bells ringing because our next story comes from Jay, where his grandfather also saw something strange.
My grandfather lived in an old farmhouse, and they were all farmers, basically, in Michigan. He got sick, and they kind of invited all the family over to hang out and just spend time with them. They had a hospital bed set up in the living room, which was like the center of the house. The way that farmhouse is built, every room was branched off of that. There's a door to every room. It was kind of a weird setup, but the center of the house is where the hospital bed was. So we're all in there talking and sharing stories and hanging out, and he's just kind of experiencing it and laughing with us and observing. And he kind of signals to my grandmother at the time he wants to say something, so we all kind of stop and listen. And out of the blue, he just says, the angel of death visited me last night, and he pointed to his window. And it's a big bay window. Outside was just a big old tree. And it was maybe 7 to 8 feet off the ground. And he just pointed and said, yeah, that's where it was. And we all kind of look at each other like, did he just say that? We're kind of judging the room, looking at everyone's reactions, and he just said it like it was a matter of fact. Just like, yeah, 2 + 2 is 4. So that kind of messed with us a little bit. And then went back to just listening and telling stories again. He didn't have any brain issues. I mean, he was still cognitive. He was still, in the now. I mean, there was nothing wrong with him mentally. It was, I think it was cancer that he had. I can't remember exactly what he had, but it was something that affected him physically, not emotionally. So he was still there. And that was it weirds me out to this day because they were raised Catholic, but they were kind of weird with their religion. I don't think it was such a strong thing. They never really talked about angels and demons. It was just kind of like, oh, go to church on Sunday and do this and be a good person. But that's the first time I ever heard him talk about a demon or an angel of death that I ever remember. And that's the one that stuck out the most because it was so not in character for him. But at the same time, he was so, like I said, in the now. It was so weird to hear him say that, and it stuck with me since. And he described it, and he's like, oh, it was big and black, and I saw him staring at me. And he didn't move for a while. And I turned away and looked back, and he was gone. And very shortly after that, my grandfather on my dad's side passed. And we were never close, but at that point, it just, I don't know, something kind of sat weird with me, and it kind of, I don't know, I in a weird way, I kind of respected him more, but it scared the hell out of me. I mean, as it would, I would assume anybody. The house felt weird after that. It was always peaceful and happy, but the house just, I don't know, I didn't really go back. I don't know why, but I wouldn't say my beliefs changed after that happened. I just would say that it kind of tacked on another layer of there's something else here. What it may be, I don't know.
So that's the story of Jay. His grandfather was sick. Everybody goes to the house. They're hanging around, spending time with him. And he's cognizant. He's present. He's in the moment. He's kind of laughing, enjoying everybody's company when he wants to say something to his wife, and to everybody. I guess he basically just wants to make an announcement, and he casually kind of says, the angel of death visited last night, and he points over to the big bay window, and everybody's kind of like, what? But he wasn't scared of it. Again, very casual. And then he goes on to kind of describe this big black being just staring at him. And he's outside that bay window looking right at him. The grandfather turns away, looks back, and it's gone. And Jay says, again, it did not fit with his grandfather's personality. He never talked about demons, angels, death, the supernatural. He was not like medicated. He was not doped up on something. He makes a point to say he was in the moment. He was cognizant. He was hanging out with everybody. They're trading stories. And it was just like, he just kind of dropped this bombshell of like, yeah, I saw this. Well, he actually uses the phrase as well, angel of death. He didn't say like, I saw a black shadowy figure. I saw a black mass. I saw somebody outside a shadow figure. He says, I saw the angel of death. The angel of death visited last night is what he says, which is very creepy. And in a very short time after that incident, the grandfather passes away. Spooktacular.
Very creepy. So, you want my opinion on this?
I sure do.
So obviously this is a little different. We know that this grandfather was about to pass, right?
Yeah.
He had a physical sickness. I was trying to put myself in this scene, I guess you could say. Trying to envision what this was like. I mean, was this like a funeral for someone still alive, basically? They were having a party at the house with him on his like hospital bed in the middle of the room?
I guess it's like Yeah, it's almost, I would say it's more like one last hurrah. Like it's a nice send off
Okay.
rather than a funeral. Like I don't think they were going around the room being like, oh, I always liked his nice laugh and the way he gave me. Like I think they were sort of just saying, oh, remember we used to play catch, trying to kind of cheer him up, get some less quality time with him.
Yeah, I mean, I had some. So I don't have doubts that he had this dream or said this, right? I have doubts on it being an omen because he was about to pass and everyone knew that, obviously. That's why they were having all these people over.
Right.
He wasn't doing well. When you know you're about to pass and I assume that those final days that you probably think about that a lot.
Yeah, you must.
And you think about, is this going to be the day? Is this the day the angel of death comes and gets me? So I think it's very likely that he could, and I'm no doctor or or know anything about this, but I feel like it's very likely that he is just dreaming about things that he's thinking about all the time. And, I mean, was that the actual angel of death in his dream?
So
is that the question?
This is what's interesting to me. He never said he was asleep when he saw him. He just says, last night I was visited by the angel of death. He was standing out that window staring at me.
Interesting.
So I didn't think it was a dream, but now that you bring up dreams, like, we don't know. Maybe he had a dream and thought he was awake, like no, unless somebody was with him
that
overnight.
would change things for me. That would change things for me.
Yeah, like I took it as he didn't, I mean, at least obviously Jay doesn't know because he was in the room when the grandfather just said the angel of death was, out that window last night staring at me. So the grandfather never said it was a dream, but there's also no way to know if he just had a very realistic dream. So that's interesting that
grandfather might not even know.
Yeah, exactly. Who knows? Maybe the Grim Reaper that was out the window doesn't know.
Yeah, when he said last night the angel of death visited me, I don't know if it was from us having heard all these stories so far and be just associating with a dream, or when someone says last night someone visited me, you could say a ghost visited me or an uncle visited me. I just, for some reason, think it's always assumed that's a dream that you were visited in. If he was visited in real life by the angel of death outside the window, that would be crazy.
That's unsettling. That's kind of how I interpreted that. So again, we don't know because unfortunately we can't ask Jay's grandfather, but even so, it's weird to have a dream that you're in the spot you're actually at. Like we'll assume he was in that hospital bed, so he's dreaming that he's in the bed, in the room he's really in, looking out the bay window that's really there, and there's just this black figure. He doesn't describe a classic Grim Reaper with like a sickle and a hooded cloak or anything, but he does identify it as the angel of death. So it's
now. Do you know a lot about the angel of death?
Not as much as I'd like.
Did you know even if typically people could say they see the angel of death at times other than when they're actually about to die, or they could see the angel of death and then not die for a week? Because it seems like if the angel of death is coming, they're not just coming to hang out. I mean, I would think they're coming to take you at that moment.
Yeah, you would assume. I think that it's sort of like I had mentioned in my list of 900 death omens earlier. It falls under that category almost too of like people will start speaking to loved ones, angels, whatever, when they're dying. But there's definitely also accounts of people saying like, no, don't take me, please, no. And then they die, which is obviously much more disturbing. But I wonder if they're seeing some sort of angel of death. And then it always goes back to like the chicken and the egg. It's like, is death usually, if you think of like the Christmas Carol, the third ghost is like basically death, the Grim Reaper as we know him. Like I just said, big black cloak, hood, no real face. Maybe it's like a skull underneath. Like, do people see that because they've been conditioned to think that that's what it is, so it's manifesting in their mind? Or is that the description because throughout time, so many people have seen a real hooded figure who really is the angel of death? So it's like, it's hard to freaking know either way, but apparently he was confident he saw something. And again, didn't seem too shaken by it. As you said,
Right,
like,
which is crazy too. I mean,
right, if you saw a ghost, you'd be scared. If you saw who you thought was the angel of death out your window, I mean, unless, again, like you had said, maybe he spent so much time being like, oh man, this is it for me. I had a good life. Maybe he came to terms with it. So when he saw him, he was like, oh, okay, let's do this thing. So he wasn't too bothered.
he was like, excuse me, everybody, just want to have an announcement to make. Last night, the angel of death, he was right there.
Right there.
Seemed like a good guy,
Just
Seemed like a nice guy.
Just checking the scene, doing some reconnaissance.
Yeah.
Maybe he was like, "Oh, I'm here.
Just,
I'm here a few days early. Pardon me," and
Yeah.
crept back into
It's
the
like he
shadow.
visited, we had a cup of coffee, had a little chat, and he decided we could come back in a couple days,
Yeah.
do this again.
Bought him some time.
I said to him, listen, Angel of Death, I got this whole party thing happening tomorrow. It'd probably be better if you come back. Just let me get through this party. And he was like, you know what? I'll give you that.
Exactly. He was probably like, "There's a guy down the street who's supposed to die tomorrow, but I'll switch. As long as I hit my quota for the week, I'll be good." Gave him that extra party. Well, that story leads us into our final story, which again has a weird connection with sort of a bay window and a shadowy figure.
The brothers Mysterio.
This experience comes to us from a young woman named Ursula, who is originally from Wisconsin, though currently living in northern Sweden.
To give you a quick background of the environment, I suppose, I'd like to explain to you that we're Native American, so we live just outside of the city. My grandmother's house is on the reservation. So, anyway, my grandma and my mom and I were talking. This was about in 2005. And we decided that we would move in with her. A few years prior, she had been diagnosed with a rare tumor called a carcinoid tumor. It's got the potential to turn into cancer, but it can be removed. Unfortunately, when they operated, they could only take out so much because of its location. She would not have survived if they had removed the whole tumor because it required taking out most of her intestines too. So, she was put into a nursing home for rehabilitation purposes, but she healed up excellent and surprised her doctors, and she was released early and sent home. So for a couple of years, she had been really happy, and she was healthy, and she had been gaining some weight back and getting her strength back, and, things were good for her for a little bit. But by 2005, as I said, we spoke about moving in with her because the tumor had begun to grow.
Ursula's grandmother's tumor was growing again and causing her intense pain, making it hard to eat and sleep. Eventually, she became more depressed and grew weaker. That fall, her grandmother told them she wanted to return to the nursing home, to be placed on a better schedule and receive the care and comfort she needed to get back on her feet again. That December, the plans were finalized and she moved back to the nursing home. And that is when something supernatural began to happen.
But 2 weeks before Christmas, we put up this little Christmas tree she had on a table in the front window, and we would plug it in, it would be all lit up, and it was really cute, it was really nice, but then unplug it at night. And we had these white lace curtains, and we had a really big front window, so we would just draw them instead of closing all the curtains. And so then the light from the street would kind of shine inward, and you could still see in the dark. And one night, I walked through the living room, and I went into the bedroom, and I laid down in bed, and I just looked over out the door, and from the doorway, you can see pretty good into the living room. You can see the front window, and I could see, the heavier curtains, and I could see the Christmas tree. And right smack dab between them was what I felt was the shape of a man. And it was all black. I mean, you couldn't see through it, and no light went through it. And I thought, oh my God. I got scared, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So I got up, and, I turned on the light. Nothing was there. So I turned out the light, and I looked again. But all I saw was the Christmas tree. So I was like, well, okay, I don't know. Walked around the house, and I went back to bed. And I looked over my shoulder, And there he was standing again. And so I stared for a little bit, trying to figure out, am I seeing things? Is this a trick of the mind? Am I too tired? Is this a trick of the lighting? So I got up and I went in there to investigate, and nobody was there. My mom is asleep. My grandma's away. And it's just me. I'm the only one awake. And I thought, wow, I don't know. So I looked around the house again. Nobody. I went back to bed. And I thought, I'm not going to look again. I was scared. I didn't want to look. But I couldn't stop feeling like somebody was out there staring at me. And, it felt, like you get that feeling, that creepy, crawly feeling when someone is just staring at you and you don't want to turn around. I'm like, oh my gosh, no. So I finally fell asleep and I kind of forgot about it. And then, we had our day and I didn't say anything. And then it was nighttime again. So the same routine, checking the house. And every night I would start in the back room and end up through the living room back to bed. And I looked. And there was this man standing by the tree. And I thought, well, am I seeing things? Is it something, like some sort of, I don't know, anything. So I got it to look, but there was nothing there. Walked around the house, nobody was there. And so I went back into the living room and I stood where I thought I saw the man. I looked in the bed, in the bedroom and nobody was there and I couldn't see anything. I'm like, well, I don't know. So then I walked a little ways away, probably, to the doorway of where my room was, and I turned around to look. I looked around the living room very slowly, very carefully, trying to figure out and justify what I was seeing. Is it just the lighting? Is it a shadow? But I couldn't see anything until I laid back down in bed, of course. And so I looked and he was there. And I thought, I don't know what's going on. There's no explanation for this. Nobody could be in the house. You can't run away or hide without making noise, without me seeing you. It's really just a straight walk from my bedroom right into the living room. So if there was a real person there, they don't have time to run away. So I just sat there, staring at this man in the window, or that's inside the house, but looking seemingly out the window. And I fell asleep and I forgot, about it. So by day 3, I was scared. I'll admit that, but he didn't do anything. He didn't say anything. Nothing happened. He was just standing there. So after a while of seeing him every night, I kind of normalized it, like, okay. I don't have like that feeling of malicious intent. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't say anything. Nothing bad is happening. He's just standing there. And, there was some nights where I'm looking at him and it feels like he's just looking out the window. And then some nights it feels like he knows I'm looking at him and he knows I can see him, so he's looking right back at me. It just feels like we're staring at each other. Nothing happens, it just feels that way. It's hard to explain. So then we go to visit my grandmother about a week and a half after I'm seeing this guy. And she explains, oh, I had a nightmare. Well, what was it? What's wrong? She goes, all I remember is that, I dreamt of my husband and I don't know, but I was scared of him. And he was trying to talk to me and I didn't want to hear it. And, he was following me and I got angry because I was scared of him and I don't know why. And I didn't want him to know I was afraid of him, but I got angry and I started yelling, leave me alone, go away, stuff like that. And as I'm listening to her tell me this, something began to click. During that year, I remembered that she was saying she was having dreams of her husband, and every time she dreamed of him, she was scared of him. She didn't want to look at him. She didn't want him to touch her. He was following her. He wouldn't leave her alone. He would try to talk to her, and she'd yell, "Stop it, leave me alone, I don't want to hear it, shut up." She didn't want to be bothered, and she was scared, and it made her angry. And when she woke up, she would feel sad and guilty and say, "I don't know why I'm dreaming these things." And she said that she had never really dreamed of him like this before, at least not in a very long time. So when she told me this when she was in the nursing home, I thought, it's about time I say something. So I began one day to talk to my mom and my uncle. This was maybe like a day or two after this happened. And I said, I don't know if it's just me or maybe something is going on, but I've been seeing every night now for about, a week and a half, almost 2 weeks now, this man. I think it's a man. When I'm in the bedroom and I look out the door, I can see the Christmas tree, and I can see, like the heavier curtains off to the side, but in the middle there is this solid black, dense figure, and it feels like it's a man. I said, and he just stands there, and sometimes it feels like he's just looking out the window, and sometimes it feels like he's looking right at me. And they kind of got quiet for a bit. But then my uncle said, but our dad, once we built the place, used to sit in the window all the time. He'd stand there and look out, or sit in the, on a chair and look out the window. And a lot of the times this was at night, they would just sit and look outside and look at all the stars and the constellations and stuff. And, this for him was a regular thing. And slowly, very slowly, it was coming together for me. All these things that my grandma had been saying earlier about her dreams, that was, triggered by the more recent dream she told me about. And I remembered, oh, okay. And then I'm seeing this man every night in the window. And so part of me is comforted, because now I definitely know his intent is not to, terrorize anybody or to scare people. But now I'm afraid also. I'm not afraid of him, but I'm afraid of what it means. And she's having these nightmares of her late husband. And I just, sit there quietly and say, okay. And I think about it, and it makes more sense to me now that it's probably my grandfather. After this, it must have been a couple of days, and about 3 days after Christmas, we get a phone call in the early morning from the nursing home, and my grandmother passed away that morning. She had a blood clot in her leg that nobody knew about, and that morning she got up and she was getting ready for the morning, and she was washing her hands, and the nurse said she gasped and she fell. And she ran to her and she screamed and called for help. It was already too late. I'm sorry. That my grandma had already passed away. That was really difficult, because you just don't expect that type of thing to happen. I know she lived a full life, and and I should be happy for that. But whenever you lose someone, it still just feels so unexpected. That day, I just remember thinking, oh no. And it was finally clear to me what it meant. Her dreams, the man I've been seeing, I just knew. I knew it had to have been my grandfather waiting for her. In the dreams, he's trying to prepare her, and she was afraid. And after that, I remember thinking, it can't be true. All these dreams and this man. No, I didn't want to believe it. I did believe it, but I didn't want to. It's like admitting you're wrong. You're wrong, but you're going to be stubborn. You don't want to admit. So that's kind of where I was at. And I remember that, defiantly, I was going to wait for him. I'm going to look for him, tonight. And I never did see him again. Not like that anyway. But I did keep my eye out. I did watch for him by the Christmas tree or in the big window, but after my grandma passed, I never did see him. So, I kind of felt like he definitely tried to send her a message that it did mean something, and even though I wasn't afraid of him, I definitely was afraid of what it meant, and it meant he was coming, to meet her.
So basically, Ursula's story about her grandmother, very interesting. And in the end, it seems the grandmother is having dream visitations from a loved one, her late husband. What's interesting of note here is she is scared of her husband in these dreams. She's avoiding him, doesn't want to talk to him, running away. She's saying, "Shut up, don't talk to me," which usually if you're dreaming of your loved one, your spouse, you would think even if they've passed away in a dream, you'd be kind of happy to see them or you might not notice. She's more freaked out by it. Meanwhile, Ursula at her grandmother's house keeps seeing this shadow figure. She says it's non-threatening, but it definitely is unsettling. She never thinks she's in danger or anything, but she does say she gets that sense of being stared at sometimes. She says this figure appears to be staring out the window, other times staring at her. It's very unnerving. And then later, she learns that the grandma's husband, her grandfather, used to stand in that spot or sit there and just stare out that large, big window. So this one's interesting to me just because they both had death omens. The grandmother is having dreams about her dead husband where she's running from him and afraid to talk to him. Maybe because he's trying to tell her, like, hey, come with me, it's time to die, and she knows. Meanwhile, the granddaughter, Ursula, is having her own death omen where she is seeing this shadow figure that very possibly could be the ghost, the specter of her grandfather. What do you make of this one?
Well, I see why you saved this one for last, because it is an unbelievable story. I mean, This isn't a single dream by one person, even.
Right.
This is a series of dreams that two different people are having at the same time of possibly the same person.
Right.
Which is unbelievable. And the fact
do you think Ursula is dreaming when she sees this figure by the window, or do you think she's awake?
Ursula's the younger girl, right?
She's the granddaughter, yes. The one who told the story.
She was, you're right. She wasn't dreaming. She was, you're right. She was, like I said, I think I'm stuck in this dream world.
Yeah. This is all a dream right now.
Yeah, she was laying in bed, right? And seeing this dense, dark figure.
Right. And like, as you said, for many nights in a row too, not like a one-off thing where we could chalk
right. So, so take it even further. And the grandmother was dreaming, right?
Yes, she was dreaming of her husband.
So
repeatedly.
She's dreaming. I don't think it even matters. One person is having these visions of him, of this figure, not even knowing that at the same time her grandmother's having dreams of this same ghost or possibly her grandfather, and that's going on at the same time. I mean, it is crazy to me that Ursula, is in the grandmother's house, and the possibly the grandma's husband, her grandfather would always look out the window like that, and
she never knew that either, which is cool. Like, it's not, we can't say it was her subconscious or she was thinking of her grandfather. It's like she didn't even know until she mentioned it to her own mother and uncle, and they were like, "Oh, Grandpa used to do that all the time," which is spooky.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting chills thinking about it now, again. But she's seeing this dark, dense figure, right? So he's there in some way, but he's not.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
But meanwhile, he's visiting the grandmother in her sleep, and she's seeing him. it's like, was he not there in the house because the grandma isn't, and he's probably sitting in that house like, who is this in
Yeah, it's.
the house? Where's my wife?
I definitely got that feeling that he's like, right, showing up at the house to, escort her to the next life, whatever, the great beyond. And it's like he's looking around the house, he's waiting by the window, he's staring at Ursula, and he's probably like, where the heck is she? So then I don't know if
I have nightmares about this, Tommy, I'm gonna be upset.
you signed the waiver before we started. And another interesting thing to note in this case is Ursula says she never saw the shadow figure again after her grandma passed away.
That too is crazy.
So again, yeah, it's not like a trick of the light. It's not like, she's seeing things and she got glasses and then she never saw it again or something. It's like as soon as her grandma passes away, everything stops, which is, again, I guess you could be like, well, maybe that's a coincidence, but that's one hell of a coinky-dink.
Yeah, I mean, I was jotting down questions to ask as the story was happening, and that was one of my questions. Did these dreams stop after, when the grandmother passed away? And she ended up answering that herself towards the end. And it just seemed like this one was for anything I wanted to try and doubt, it was giving me good reasons not to be able to. There's just so much to back everything up. The grandmother having something going on, her having something going on in the house, the grandfather always looking out that window. Just a really creepy good story.
A wild story. And I keep going back to like, does the window symbolize something? I know on that list of death omens, it was like, looking at a full moon through glass, looking at an owl through glass, but is there something, because Jay's grandfather was looking through a big open window when he saw the angel of death, as he called it, and Ursula's grandfather, his shadow form, was standing staring out this window. So it's like, is there some sort of connection with windows? Does that symbolize something? Does that mean something? I don't really know.
I don't know. When she said that the figure would be sometimes we'd just be looking out the window, and sometimes it just felt like it was looking at her and they were staring like into each other, but he wasn't really staring, but it felt that way.
Yeah.
That really took me to a whole nother level of chill.
Yeah. It was a wild experience. It's been a wild episode, and I guess like the skeptic side, you could very easily say a lot of these, if they're dreams, they're just dreams. It's nothing more. Or you can say, like we had mentioned, like sometimes looking back after someone has died, then you could say, well, these were probably all signs. That's what all this meant. This weird stuff happened before. But with the stories where, such as Ursula, where it's like things were happening before, like she knew her grandma wasn't doing well, but all these things were going on that are sort of unmistakable omens of death, and then as soon as the death happens, it all stops. That's a lot harder to say, like, well, it was just selective memory, or, it's like, how do you debunk some of this stuff? It's hard to explain. It's mysterious. And then I wonder too, like, can we know we're going to die? Is there, on some conscious level, is the universe letting us know? Is that what these signs are? Could there be any truth to these death omens? Who knows? Not me. Do you have any idea?
Well, I've never died, so I haven't gotten any signs this week that I'll be passing, but I have no idea, man. I mean, all these stories definitely make you, like you said, you can question a lot of them, but there's enough in there that you can't, that make you think that maybe, there is something to this, and there's something, there are people who have these experiences that sound legitimate.
Absolutely. Final question for you as we wrap up here. Has your time on this episode listening to these stories, has it changed your view at all on the paranormal, the supernatural, the unexplained, the possibilities out there?
No, I don't think it's changed my mind at all. I mean, I still think like at the beginning of this episode, I said I have an open mind to it all, and I'm still going to doubt things, and I think I was during this whole show, but like Ursula's story, that's there do seem like this happens, and assuming that these people they're telling the truth, and knowing my experience with the dog tadpoles, it does seem entirely possible. So I'll continue, looking at things with an open mind when it comes to this.
Perfect. Well, I want to thank you again for taking the time, coming on, co-hosting this episode with us. It was an honor to have you on the show.
Thanks, man. It was awesome. It was a lot of fun.
We appreciate it, and please let me know if you have any nightmares in the next night or two, and I'll update the listeners.
Dude, I am not a good dreamer, so I'm going to the lights in my house are off right now. I'm all the way on the first floor all by myself, and I'm going to run up the stairs like someone's chasing me.
Good.
That's how I run up to bed after I watch a scary movie, Tommy. So thanks for scaring the shit out of me today.
Our pleasure. Thank you
Appreciate
for
it.
being a part of the Brothers Mysterium. Clips heard in this episode include Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack, Season 12, Episode 6, a Cosgrove Mura production, distributed by Buena Vista Television. We'd also like to thank our voice talent for this episode, Chrissy Chanel and Kelly Walton. Music from this episode came from purpleplanet.com. That's purple-planet.com. Our theme song is by the band The Never Grin. And if you want to get in touch with the Brothers Mysterium, you could do so at Twitter or Instagram at Mysterium Bros. Head on over to facebook.com/The Brothers Mysterium or email us directly at thebrothersmysterium@gmail.com. And as always, we want to thank you for listening to us.